It's being sent to YouTube. Zoom has updated. There's a whole bunch of things that are different about it now.
Mm. Yeah, I just downloaded it. I just downloaded it the other day, so I updated my version of it.
Hmm. There's
You've
Joe.
Joe,
Hmm. Hey, Joe. Say something.
Yeah, I'll keep saying things. Yeah, it's hard
There
for
you
me
go.
to.
Yeah, the audio is a little bit wonky. Maybe it'll get better.
I doubt it. I'm gonna, well, yeah, I'll switch my
Oh, you're
audio.
not at the bar. You're not at the restaurant.
Yeah, but I'm the only one here right now, so I figured I wouldn't hook up the owl. But because, yeah, I didn't bring a dock, so now I didn't bring my charger, regular charger, so I got to use a USB one,
Yeah.
which implies that now I can't plug in the owl to this computer. But this is the only one with the HDMI, So
It's always something.
yeah,
So, did you and Tracy have fun last week at dinner?
oh yeah, it was a good
It
time.
was really good.
it was
Yeah.
nice meeting Tracy. Thanks for convincing
Yeah.
her to go.
Yeah.
She said she had a good time.
I'm
Good.
glad.
Good.
She always wonders when I invite her out to someplace with
Yeah.
all my tech head friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to have a rule about when we went out when I was in the army flying is pilot talk can last 60 seconds max. After that,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. We had Scotty. We had our board meeting at Fleming's last week.
oh yeah.
Had a nice time. Scotty's been there a number of times.
I've been to Fleming's many times with Jim.
You know. Yeah. Yeah. So that's going. That's going. Everybody's happy. Next thing I got to do is open up my slideshow.
I don't even see much of the board. It's just us three.
So far,
It's a little early still. Oh, you know what? I actually can do a better audio job.
it's actually cleared up.
Oh, has it?
Yeah. Sometimes when you connect up to an online thing, there's some, I don't know, some learning that happens. Some
Yeah,
adjustment
optimizations
automatically.
to
Yeah. And
yeah.
at first it was pretty weird, but it's nice and clear now.
All right. Well, if it's cleared up, then I won't bother hooking up the speaker.
Yeah.
I got one of these um, newer webcams that has a really good microphone on it. It's
Hmm.
called Opal C1. I saw it, heard it recommended in a podcast. Um, I got this about, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe. It seems good.
Sounds clear.
Yeah.
Yep. So, so what else is happening?
Oh, where I'm going to hold a listening party for the Linux Unplugged 600 episode podcast up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where am I going to hold it? We're going to have it over at the Ozone Brew House over in
Yeah.
Old Town.
When is that?
The 2nd of February at 3 p.m.
Hmm.
So they always do a live show on Sundays at 3
Mhm.
Eastern, 12 Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
I hardly ever join their Mumble server to listen and participate in the live show, but they sent out a call and they decided that, hey, it's our 600 episode. What we'll do is we'll ask local groups to kind of host their own meetup to do a listening party and then join in on the Mumble and say hello from wherever you're at.
Um, Old Town. Is that
Yeah.
a city or is it in
No,
a?
it's a section in Lansing.
I see.
So Lansing has set up their or decided to call their areas by names to make them sound fancy.
So like
So Old
Chinatown.
Town is down by the Fish Ladder, in one of the original downtowns for Lansing,
Hmm.
I think. I don't know. And then they've got Rio Town, which is where the our old the Rio Olds
The
factory was.
Oldsmobile plant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the old Rio plant,
The
which
old
is back
Ransom
behind the
Olds.
current Oldsmobile plant or GM plant, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're also social districts. So you can get a drink at one bar and then walk down the street to the next, or just wander around
So
that part of the city.
this is Sunday, February 2nd at 3 o'clock at where?
It's at Ozone's Brew House.
Hmm.
There is a link in our meetup page. I think I put it in there. Let me check. Well, let me not get rid of that link because I want to put that in. Yeah, let me pull a link and post it in the chat. But yeah, I mean, it could just be me again, but that's okay.
Hey,
I enjoyed it.
if it works out, it could be you and me.
I've talked to a couple of the people at work and that'll work out.
Hey.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people at work and starting to listen to the podcast, so they may
Who does
join
the
me.
podcast? Tell me about this podcast.
It's a group called Jupiter Broadcasting. So Chris Fisher used to run the Linux Action Show, and now, but they transitioned away from that to Linux Unplugged. They used to have a Linux news section, but they also do a number of other ones. One of them's the self-hosted show.
Linux
If you go
Unplugged.
to jupiterbroadcasting.com.
I'm
Yeah.
on linuxunplugged.com.
It's good. I have a good time listening to them. I get
Yeah. Chris
Yeah.
Fisher, Wes Payne, and Brent Gervais.
and they've got one called Coder Radio.
Hmm. Wow.
Well, if my internet ever clears up and I get a connection to Meetup, I'll post a link. Oh, there it is.
Are these guys Lansing people?
No, they're out of Seattle or the Seattle area.
I see. Okay. And then you're gonna have a meetup in Lansing for any
Exactly.
people in the area that want to go. Kind of like what you do for Mug
That's right.
every Tuesday night. Yeah. Or every
Exactly.
month. Right.
Yeah.
They
They always have a Mumble server open so anybody can join in and
Mhm.
join the conversation live.
Hmm.
But it is primarily a podcast that they record. I listen to the unadulterated show that gets published to me. I pay them
Yeah.
their monthly fee
Yeah,
to
you
support
get
them,
the-
and
you
I get the
premium
unadulterated
content.
feed because I
Right.
laugh at them all the time. I like hearing the
Right.
uncut version,
Right.
but I never managed to be able to listen at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. I got too much other stuff going on.
They always do it at 3 p.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, they record noon Pacific, which 3 p.m. out here.
Okay.
Well, if the internet connection here is slow, I guess that's the one downside. We're still looking for new locations to host meetups at. Because one of the Michigan Technology Network's functions is to help support the local meetup groups. And as you know, locations are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, physical ones, absolutely.
Yeah. And we're trying to get back to more physical ones. And a lot of people would prefer to start meeting physically, hence why I host this one.
Plus, you
But-
can drink.
Yeah, plus I get a beer.
I did a mall walk today and I listened to podcasts the whole time. And um, the people I was listening to had a long rant about how unhappy they were that um, Tim Cook of Apple gave Donald Trump $1 million for his
Yeah,
inauguration. Um, they had lots of alternative explanations, but all in all, they were just mad.
you got to kiss the ring.
Yep.
That's what's happening. That's what all these. That's why Meta has dropped all their fact checking. That's why all these people are contributing to the inauguration. They're kissing the ring. And I don't like it.
All right. Well, here's the link from their they're using a thing called oh, what the hell is this called?
Colony events.
Gathio,
Yeah.
which is a self-hosted meetup.com replacement,
Ah,
which I don't know. It's another thing I'm looking at because hey, meetup costs money.
it does, but there's people there. We get a
I know
fair
it's
amount of
the
people
network
that are going.
effect.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
that's
I mean,
why
you can go
people
to
are in
one of these other.
GitHub is because
Craig for years tried to push us on to gettogether.com or net or whatever it was. Just
yeah.
never got any traction because there's nobody there.
Yeah, no, that's the big thing. I mean, there's a local group that does a foodie group, and they were
Oh,
looking for an alternative to help organize events. In their
right.
case, they already have their 300-400 members that would be happy to, just move to another
Yeah,
platform, keep going.
yeah,
Um, but the organizer was like, "Hey, we got 300 people. We'll just charge everybody a $3 a year uh, membership fee, and then great, we'll keep going on Meetup. If anybody doesn't want to pay it, well, then you can be blocked
sure,
in the group,
sure.
help support the group. And if you don't want to, then don't come.
That's right.
I'm just gonna go make myself a cup of coffee. I'll be back in about a minute.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little concerned. There's Mr. Williams. There's only 8 of us, and 2 of them are bots, and one is the speaker. Oh, lost it. And there he's back. Mr. Williams,
Hi,
how you doing?
I took a short nap and almost missed a meeting.
And there's Victor. Yeah. I'm thinking there's some other people that are napping right now, missing the meeting.
Hmm.
There's Jim Peterson.
Yes. Hello.
Hey,
How's it
hey,
going?
there you are.
Yeah.
Going well. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah, we're just kind of hoping a few more people show up before we get moving.
Okay. QR codes.
That
Oh,
was
that was it.
last.
Oh, that was, yeah, okay.
But it seems every time we use this, they've made changes.
Yeah, it changed. Zoom changed quite a bit this time.
Yeah. First thing, it fired up immediately.
Fired up what?
It fired up immediately for me.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Scott.
He can't hear you yet.
Jim,
There he is. Hey.
I guarantee if I show you my cup, it'll make you hungry.
Yeah. Does it look like a steak? Oh, there you go. There's a place. There's a place.
What do they feature?
Scallops
Scallops.
Nice.
and other. It's and all kinds of seafood. It's a place in Rockland, Maine,
Hmm.
and we stop there every year on our way out to Maine.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of the highlights of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
Something
Yeah,
on the
that is
culinary
seafood.
checklist every year.
Yes, yes. Because our trips are basically going from town to town, stopping at tasty eating places. That's what we do.
Well, if anybody ever goes down to St. Augustine, Florida, there's a
Yeah,
great place down there called Osteen's
yeah.
that has just excellent shrimp and
Really?
yeah, clams, just every all seafood
Wow.
there.
Wow.
How's it going, Dick?
Well, you know what? It's 6:47. I think we probably ought to just start this meeting, eh? Make it
Okay.
official. All right. So welcome to the January 2025 meeting. Wow, 2025 already. Tonight's featured speaker is Scott Belknaves. He's the guy with the headphones on, waving frantically. There you go. He's going to be talking about OneWire and sensors and Linux and neat stuff like that. Let's see. Please mute yourself if you're not already. That way, any unexpected noises will not come through and annoy everybody else. Got the board of directors. There's me, Jim McClellan. We got Wolf, and we got Joe Ryan. Joe, there you go. Dick Williams, and Dave Satwitz won't be here tonight. He's traveling somewhere. And Justin Triplett usually shows up a little bit right around 7 or so because he's on his drive home right now. Welcome membership. Normally Dave would talk about membership, but basically it's real simple. We encourage everybody to join as a member. We are currently the way it works is the dues are normally $50 a year to become a member, $10 a year for an internet patron or student, and we offer corporate memberships as well. But we don't have a lot of need for money these days since we're not meeting in a meeting location that costs money. Our only real expenses are the Zoom account and the Meetup account and a few other things. So what we're doing is we're not expiring memberships, or we're not forcing people to pay for renewals. Every month we're just extending it another month. So for the foreseeable future, you join once and pay your dues, and you're a member, and until sometime far down the road. We don't know when that's going to be. It may never be, because, like I said, we don't have a lot of expenses. So you can go to the Mug website, mug.org, click on membership and join that way. We normally do jobs looking for people and people looking for jobs. So do we have jobs out there looking for people? Normally, well, it used to be Gib would always tell us about the jobs at Ford Motor Company or at what was he, American Airlines?
Yeah,
He's
American
retired
Airlines.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any you guys know of any jobs out there? Doesn't look like it. We don't have that many people here tonight. So then we flip it around. Anybody, you guys looking for a job? I think we're all pretty well employed or retired or something. Okay, we'll just skip right by that. Let's see. We got some sponsors. Averis, that's my company. We help to sponsor. Altair Computing sponsors. A2 Hosting, they provide us web hosting. And then we got some media sponsors. No Starch Press, Manning Press, and Tilted Windmill. They give us the occasional giveaways. We're gonna have to get back on that. See if we can start getting some more giveaways. Stay connected with us. You can go to the website, the Mug website, and there's a mailing list you can join. There's our meetup. We've got about 1,020 people on our meetup now, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, stay connected. You'll hear about upcoming meetings and stuff. Let's see. Upcoming meetings. We got some good news there. Next month, February, what is it, the 11th, I think. We've got scheduled. Let's see, get into February. Yeah, February 11th, we got scheduled Tom Lawrence. He's a local guy. He's going to be talking about virtualization on Linux using XCP-ng. It's an open source fork of the old Citrix Zen server. I don't want to say old because it's actually quite well maintained and everything. But anyway, XCP-ng is a really nice virtualization framework, especially interesting for people who have been using VMware and now they're pissed off at VMware because they got bought out by Broadcom, and Broadcom has increased prices and eliminated freebies and all kinds of stuff. So anybody that's running VMware might be interested in switching over to XCP-ng. And Tom will be here to talk about that. Should be really good. The meeting in March, which is also going to be, that'll be on the 11th of March. We're going to be talking about Advent of Code. You remember when we did that last year? A couple of you guys were here. We did an Advent of Code meeting where we picked a whole bunch of different languages and lots of people got involved. I think there were 6 or 7 people involved in presenting solutions for the Advent of Code. Now, Wolf and I have been working on this for a couple of weeks, trying to get it set up. And we've already solved it in a bunch of languages. But we encourage anybody who is interested to try to do it in the language of their choice. Even if we've already, like for instance, I did it in Perl, and I did it in SQL, and I did it in awk. I think I might have done it in something else too. Anyway, but if you think you want to try it in Perl or one of the other languages, go for it. We'd love to see your solution to the day one problem. I'm going to put a link to the Advent of Code website if I can find it here. If you're interested in trying this, I'm going to put it in the chat right here. There, go there and give it a try. We have a GitHub repo. Wolf, do you have that GitHub? Can you paste the GitHub link?
You can. Give me a minute.
Yeah, sure. Wolf and I, we've been committing our stuff with Git, to GitHub. So we've got this repo up there with our solutions so far. And I encourage you, if you want to clone that repo or do whatever magic you need to do with Git to basically create your own solution and send us a pull request, and we'll incorporate that into our GitHub repo. And if you're not Git savvy, if you just need some help, just send us the code. We'll put it in Git for you. Because we'd like to make this available to anybody to see how you can solve these fairly simple little problems using the language of your choice. I think Mr. Williams, I had asked you if you wanted to do the C, and you mentioned doing it in assembly. If that's something you're interested in, we'd love to see an assembly language version of this problem, and a C version of the problem, if you're inclined to do that. Jim Peterson, didn't you do one last year?
No, I did not.
Well, maybe we can get you to do one this year.
Okay.
Pick a language and give it a try. I think
Okay.
Wolf did it in Rust, which is really interesting. He did it in a few other languages as well. And I think Justin was going to do it in, what was he going to do it in Python?
That would have been my
I
pick.
don't remember. Yeah, do it in Python. We'll take
Yeah.
multiple, because
Okay.
I don't remember
What's
what
really
Justin's
interesting-
going to do it in, but I'm going to do it in. I haven't picked the language yet.
what's
Oh,
really
oh.
interesting is well, we learned a couple of things by doing this. One of them is we see kind of how you solve a problem in a language.
Mhm.
And the other thing is we get to see how people solve problems.
Mhm.
Last year, somebody did it in SED.
Hmm.
That was interesting. Somebody
I
did it
remember that,
in,
yeah.
what did they do? In the shell? I forget. There's a couple of versions.
Yeah,
that
Oh, in
really
the
surprised
bash
me.
shell.
They were creative, and that's kind of what we're going for. That's why I tried it in SQL. I thought, well, that's an interesting problem to do in SQL, and it turned out to be remarkably small solution. The SQL is pretty crazy, but it turned out to be pretty cool. So, and awk, I did it in awk, and that turned out to be a pretty simple implementation. Once
And
I
pandas.
dusted off, once I dusted off the awk in my brain, because I hadn't touched it in so long. But anyway, if you're interested in seeing it ahead of time, go grab the GitHub repo. Wolf has linked it in the chat. There's a README in there that kind of describes how the structure of the code and stuff, the structure of the files. But we're really kind of looking at that. That's not for 2 months, though. It should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to try to do this every year, because it's just neat to see people try solving problems in languages that either they know or they don't know, and they learn.
Mhm.
So give that a try. Let's see. What else do we got? We've got our meeting list, our mailing list. We've got the announce list and the discuss list. There's very, very, very low traffic on those. We got a Facebook group. I try to get the announcement out on that. We got the meetup, of course. That's where most people, I think, see the announcement now. Anyway, I don't know if we have anything else to cover before we turn it over to Scott. We will talk about, lately we've been doing a big presentation and then a kind of a little 15-minute presentation. So once Scott's done with his, we're going to talk about shell redirection this month. I think last month, what did we do last month? grep? I don't remember. But this month we're going to talk about a little bit about shell redirection. Just kick around some ideas about it. These are informal talks, but that'll come up after Scott talks. So let me introduce Scott Belnaves. Scott is one of my closest friends, and he comes from Winnipeg, Canada, Winnipeg, Manitoba. He's retired.
Currently a sovereign country.
Yeah. You might be the 51st state before too long. We'll see. Either by force or not. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, today he's going to be talking about OneWire. It's this communication technology for talking to sensors and switches and various things.
Yep.
I guess. So, Mr. Scott, take it away.
All right. If anybody has a question or is unclear on anything, I've got a relatively few number of slides. They're more or less just to attempt to keep me focused. So it'll be a lot of verbal stuff. So if you've got a question, by all means, unmute and ask away. All right, let's share this. We're going to do this. And we're going to do that. And I think, with any luck, does that look like a presentation?
Looks like something.
All right,
Yeah.
sounds good. So we're going to talk about OneWire, which is a very simple, both hardware-wise and software-wise, way for you to get sensor readings in from the outside world and potentially control things on the outside world from your computer. So it's a serial communications protocol. Now, it does, as the name imply, require wires. So depending upon where your sensors are that you're looking to control, you are going to have some kind, as few as 2 and as many as 3 wires going there, and I'll get into that in a second. Now, what I'm using it for is for doing temperature sensing and control of some things around both my house and my cottage. I've been kind of playing around with this for the better part of 15 years now. Very early on, when we bought our cottage, one of the provisos of the insurance that we got was that we had to be keeping sort of a regular eye on the place to make sure that the furnace wasn't going out, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, here in Winnipeg, where it's currently about minus 25 degrees Celsius, that sort of thing is something that you've got to keep a close eye on. So I started out many years ago with a Raspberry Pi, and I've sort of scaled up from there. But it's simple in concept to do. Now, one of the things that I've ordered some parts on, but I haven't really begun playing around with, there is a wireless version of this that uses the Zigbee protocol. And there's the whole MQTT thing and Home Assistant. This is kind of the roll your own thing that I did. At some point in the future, I may present a talk on the Zigbee when I learn a little bit more about it. But this is about as simple as it comes. Now, the wiring that I used, which we'll talk about in a little while, during the pandemic, there were at least 3 times when I had been potentially exposed and had to go and self-isolate out at the cottage. Well, you put a systems administrator, alone in a house for, a couple of weeks, and what does he end up doing? Well, wiring the place for Cat 5, Cat 6. So in both the house and the cottage, I've got Cat 5 and 6 spread all throughout the house. So for me, that's the wires that I'm using, and we'll kind of get into how I did that. So you're going to need some kind of a host adapter that's going to speak one wire and handle all the physical signaling for you. If you buy a Raspberry Pi, it's got sort of a one-wire interface, more or less built into the GPIO. It comes with one-wire libraries that allow you to, query and talk to one-wire sensors and GPIOs very, very easily. Something that I didn't put down here, which I should have, of course, there's also Arduino side of things. So if you're into Arduino, it's very, very easy to connect up one wire things using the one wire libraries on Arduino. And of course, I started with a Raspberry Pi. But eventually, what I did was I gravitated towards a USB adapter. Now, this isn't exactly one of the ones that I've got, but you can pick up these little USB adapters that look like a serial device. And there's a program that I'll be outlining that will talk to this. And you can buy these one-wire adapters from Mouser or iButtonLink, or, there's several places where you can pick them up. The nice thing, of course, with this and the program that I've got is that you're not dependent upon a particular type of Linux. So if you use the Raspberry Pi stuff or the Arduino stuff, you're more or less limited to running this on an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. If you get a USB adapter like this, and the way that I've got it implemented, you could implement this on a Macintosh. You could implement this on an Intel box. You could drag an old Sun SPARC station out of the and run an old SPARC Linux and do the same thing. Basically, anything that's got a USB port will work. So that's what I use. I've got a full-time server running both in my house and out at the cottage, which I use for storing my photos and movies, and as a Kodi server, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, they also do the duty of monitoring the temperature for me. So. This looks intimidating. It's just to explain how the actual wiring works. Now, we kind of mentioned that the one wire can either use two wires, ground and your combined signal and plus VCC, usually either plus 3.3 or plus 5. Or alternatively, you can use three wires if you've got the wires, which would allow you to put the VCC out on one wire, ground on another wire, and then the data that the sensor and the host are going to communicate with each other over that. And of course, they have the protocol that they use is, essentially the host has control of the bus, and it will query sensors. And if the sensor hears its address as it goes by, then it will grab control of the bus and do what the host wants it to do. How it does this is if you take a look on the little thing there, it's got a DS18B20, which is one of the common temperature sensors that you can use. And you'll notice that what they're doing is they're grounding the plus 5 volts essentially to ground on the device, so that 1 and 3 pin are shorted together. And then what's happening is the number 2 pin, which is the data line and the power in, that's connected to 3.3 volts. And then within the host, of course, it's using an open drain sensor. We won't get too much into the electronics of it. Bottom line is each one of the one-wire sensors can either have ground plus 3.3 or plus 5 and the signal, or they can operate off of this two-wire mode, where what they've got internally is a little capacitor, so that when they're talking on the bus and dragging the bus low to indicate data going by and stuff like that, they're operating off their little internal stored amount of electricity that they're going to run off of via this internal capacitor. These devices are very, very low consumption. They're on the order of microamps of power that these things consume. I don't run them that way. How I run them is I run them with the full power and the signal and the ground. How do I do that? Well, of course, I've got down in my basement, I've got basically a full panel, a rack set up with all my connections that go throughout the house. And what I have is an older insulation displacement uh, um, rack module, 24 ports. And what I do is I wire pin on a bank of 6 of them, right? Because usually on those old IDC panels, you'll get a bank of 6, 6, 6, and 6, right? And that's your 24. So what I do is I wire on one of the banks, I wire pin 1 to pin 1 to pin 1 to pin 1 to pin 1, etc. Pin 2 to pin 2 to pin 2 to pin 2. So essentially, when I plug in the USB connector or the into the computer, on the other side, I'm going to have a Cat5 connector that's going to plug into that bus, and then all the separate sensors are going to plug into that bus. And then all my sensors are essentially in parallel on that bus. They've all got +5, they've all got ground, and they've all got signal. So it's essentially more or less a star topology, right? With everything sort of coalescing down at one point. If you're doing the wiring yourself, pin numbers 1, 3, and 5 on the Cat5 are ground. Number 2, which is your orange, is +5, and pin number 4, which would be your blue. Sorry, I was just going over the color code in my head. That will be your data. So the wiring is very, very simple. You can use, the Cat5, Cat6 wiring that everybody's used to and everybody knows about to basically distribute the bus around the house and take your measurements or control things that you want to control via a nearby network port. Now, as with a lot of these sort of devices, this is a little side diversion here. Anybody who's ever dealt with, these sort of serial-like devices in the Linux world has had to deal with, when you reboot, when you first plug this thing in, it shows up as TTY USB 0 or USB 1, and then you reboot, and if you have multiples of them, now all of a sudden they've switched themselves around. The reason for that is varied. It's essentially race conditions. Linux, when it first fires up, it starts looking on the USB bus, and whoever happens to answer first, they're going to get TTY USB 0. Whoever answers second is going to get TTY USB 1, etc. So if you've got, a UPS that's got a USB connection so that you can control the UPS, and you've got one of these things, and you've got, who knows, maybe you do some stuff with faxes or something like that. You've got an old fax modem or something like that connected up. These things are going to move around all over the place. Well, there's a way to fix that. And basically what I did was I sort of looked at, I'm taking a look at the USB subsystem, the TTY USB. I take a look for a particular vendor and product number. And then what I do is I assign it the group dial-out. So it's not going to end up with root as its group. It's going to end up with dial-out as its group, and you'll see why in a little while. And then I create a symlink to that device. The name can be anything you want, but one of the things, if you see on that third line there, %s serial, all of these little things that look like a TTY device when you plug them in, they've got a unique serial number built into them. So now what you can do is I'm creating FTDI because that's the chipset that these things commonly use with the serial number. And now every time that I plug it in, I'm going to get a symlink. It will create a TTY USB 0 or USB 1 or whatever, but it will create a symlink that will be dev slash FTDI and then some unique serial number. And we'll see that in a little while once I actually go onto the host and give you some practical demonstrations of how this works. So that's kind of nice in that when you're setting up the interfaces in your program, you can give it a consistent interface. You don't say TTY USB 0, you say FTDI serial number, and no matter where it comes up in the Linux kernel probing order, that's fine. It's going to get a consistent name every time. And that's a trick that works for USB interfaces to UPSs, fax modems, anything that's going to look like some kind of a serial interface, like an I2C interface or something like that. You can give it a unique name so that you're not, every time you reboot your machine, you've got to go and say, oh, now I've got to change this config to be TTY USB 1 because my adapters moved around. So that's how I solve that little problem. The software that I'm using is a great little piece of software called OW Server, OW for OneWire. And what it does, it's a suite of tools that essentially sets up a OneWire server. You can point it at one of these little serial devices and USB serial devices, or if you're running on a Raspberry Pi, you can point it at the OneWire interface, which will show up under Dev Bus OneWire, I believe. So you point it at that, and then it's going to give you a very, very simple, low resource method to access the sensors that are on the box. You can have multiple temperature sensors. You're, I think, ultimately limited to, I believe, up to 64 sensors on one wire bus before you start getting into, there's so much load on the bus wire that you can't get anything more. But up to 64 temperature sensors or humidity sensors or GPIOs, that's a fair amount to be hanging off of one USB adapter. And of course, if you're using a USB adapter, well, you can simply have multiple buses. So simply, if you're ever running a situation where you need more than 64, then you just get another one of these and start stringing them on again. When you actually read the release notes to OW Server, it will tell you that it shouldn't be running as root. And of course, the Debian packaging, unfortunately, allows it to, or runs it as root. So I had to fix that when I was setting things up. The other situation that I had to fix was I had a multi-homed, my server is multi-homed. It has two Ethernet cards, one that's going towards the outside world and one that's for internal use. I, of course, want my stuff available via internal use, but I don't want this to appear on the outside world. I only want it readable from my internal network. So the way to solve that is to disable the systemd socket that gets created, so that now OW Server will create the socket, and then you can dictate what interface it's going to create the socket on, as opposed to the default packaging basically creates a systemd socket, which means that it's on every interface. So you're going to disable that OW server.socket, and then you're going to make a slight patch to the OW server.system control, and you'll notice that I've set the user to nobody and the group to dial out. Remember that with my USB UDEV rule, I set the group on the device to be dial out. Well, here I'm setting the group that the Daemon is running on as dial-out, so that, of course, that OW server it's running as nobody, an unprivileged user, but it's got the dial-out group, so it can speak to this little USB interface. And that's going to, so you make that change to the service file for the systemd, and then it's running per OW server's upstream recommendations, which is to run it as an unprivileged user and not as root. So I'll once again, when I begin to sort of show you a little bit about how easy it is to set this stuff up, it's just a couple of changes that you make to some files, and it's and everything works as you would expect. Now, there's a couple of different sensors that I'm very, very used to. One of them is it's in a TO92 style case, which is that small little transistor. It looks like just a little transistor. It's got 3 pins. The 3 pins are essentially ground, signal, and +5 or +3.3. The sensors, just about all the sensors on the one wire, they will work with any voltage from about 2.8 to 2.9 all the way, excuse me, up to 5.5 volts. So basically, if you're interfacing with something that's providing 3.3 volts, that will be fine. And if you're interfacing with something that's providing 5 volts, that'll be fine as well. Now, when you're running over long wires, of course, you're going to get a little bit of voltage drop, depending upon the length of the wire, because, of course, copper wire has internal resistance, which is the reason why they'll go as low as 2.8 for the 3.3. And, they'll do, so if you get a half a volt drop at the end of, a couple of 100 feet of Ethernet cable, it'll give you 4.5 volts. That sensor will be very, very happy. And these sensors are, they will run, or they will measure accurately within a quarter of a degree, between -55 degrees Celsius to 125 degrees Celsius, which in freedom units is -60 some odd, -68, I think, in Fahrenheit, all the way up to 240 or so above boiling. So they're reasonable little sensors that will give you a wide range of ability to sense temperatures. The other, oh goodness, yes. The other thing that you can do is the DS2413 GPIO device. This is a device that gives you, for each one of the little things, now it's going to come on a little circuit board that looks like this. I'll hold this up.
Scott, I was just going to ask, can you get rid of that thing on the right-hand side there with the people view? Is that?
Oh, how do I didn't even know.
Yeah, there you go. That's
there
better.
we go.
Thank
All
you.
right, there we go. Sorry, I didn't even know that was up there. So you're going to have a little device like this. That's a little circuit board. It's going to have an IO and a ground connector and a PIO-A and PIO-B. And these are true PIOs. They can either be configured for input or output. So in other words, you can either read the state of a switch as to whether or not the switch is high or low, and or you can output a signal, which then you can use. Now, of course, you're not going to get very much current out of one of these things, so you're probably going to want to order, if you go on just about any electronic site, you can order these little relay boards that essentially will take they provide a high impedance input, and then they'll activate a relay for you, and then the relay can turn on and off 120 volt loads or whatever you want. So that sort of gives you the ability to now either read the state of things, like whether or not you've got, if you put like a water sensor down in a well and you want to know whether or not the well's full or empty, you can read that so long as it gives you either a high or a low output, depending upon what you want. Or alternatively, I built my wife for when we were out at the cottage. My wife loves to do gardening. So I built her, ordered a cheap little relay activated water valve. And I basically hooked up the PIO to that, and then she can turn on and off the soaker hose on the garden while we're out at the cottage. So all of this is very, very nice. There's other things that you can get on the OneWire. They've got humidity sensors. They used to offer a barometric pressure sensor. I'm not sure whether they're offering that one anymore. And there's other interesting things that you can get. So for instance, you can get button things. So if you want to read if somebody's got a security device and you want them to be able to activate or deactivate something with a little wireless button that they can hold up against the sensor, and then it'll send out the information. And they even have RAM that you can store stuff in a non-volatile type of RAM on via the OneWire bus. So it's really quite a flexible little system to allow you to set up a relatively large number of sensors and inputs and outputs, and deal with them to your generalized computer via a USB interface. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Where's a list of the devices that it supports? Is there a website we can?
Yeah, there's I can maybe show that a little bit later. I can pull up a web browser and I can show you the list
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
devices.
I'd love to see all the different things it can do.
Yeah, there's quite a number of them that they offer. This is quite an old technology. OneWire's been around since the 1980s. So not only it was pioneered by Dallas Semiconductor. They're the largest supplier, but I think there are a few other suppliers of people who provide some sensors out there that you can get and connect up. So I guess what I'll do, let me just, I'm going to exit out of the presentation because the formal slides part of the presentation is now finished. But what I'm going to do is I'm logged in over on my my server here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of give you guys a rundown of how easy it is to basically control this stuff. Now I'm using the OneWire suite of tools. You're going to, there's a series of commands. Now, one of the things that OneWire does, there's either a command line tool that allows you to query the OneWire server and then just get stuff out. They also offer a Fuse file system that you could literally mount all of your sensors, and then you just have the sensors as text files. I find that to be probably more trouble than it's worth, because just running a command at the command line that you can incorporate into shell scripts or call via the subprocess module in Python or something like that is every bit as easy than reading stuff from a text file. But your mileage may vary. So if we take a look, if I go to how do I don't want to close that. Hold on. Let's do this. There we go. So if I go to dev and so if you take a look, remember where I talked about that UDEV rule. So my little device is sitting on TTY USB 0, but I've created this link to it, which is what I use when I'm doing the configuration, so that I can give it a unique serial number for the device, and that's the serial number that my device has, A10N, A4YN.
So that name device in the dev directory will always point to that specific
Will
piece of hardware.
always point to that.
Yeah.
Even so,
Nice.
if I had 3 of these plugged in,
Sure.
right, and
Yeah,
every
yeah,
time
yeah.
you booted, they ended up on their own,
Yeah,
TTY USB, I could refer to them by their unique name that will always be
Right.
that
That's
particular. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice little trick. That's saved my butt several times throughout
Sure.
my career. So, and if we take a look in the, I believe it's user lib, what is it, system D, CD serve system. D package minus LOW server lib system D lib system D system VIOW server dot service. So I've made that yes, I've made that change to the normally by default it doesn't have these it's got them, but they're commented out, and so then by default it starts up as root, because of course root is what starts stuff by default. But when we go back and we take a look at that ls minus LA dev FT cat dev or ls minus LA TTY. We see that I've got the dial out group on that. So that basically means that my OW server and PS-MyCF grep OW server. So we see that it's running as nobody, but it's got a group ID of dial out, and it's basically running. Now, it's incredibly simple to configure this OW server. You don't need a lot. Cat etc OWFS. That's it. So you'll notice I say on the server, the device is dev FTDI and the unique device name. And I am going to listen on port 127, which is the loopback, and I'm going to listen on my internal port 10.0.0.254. So, but I'm not listening on my external port. So in other words, my port that's internet connected, yes, I have a firewall, but still good practice would, in my mind anyway, means just don't run things on interfaces that they don't need to be run on. And that's the reason why you do that. Disable the system D, disable that socket, that OW server.socket, because what it does is it just creates a 4304 socket on all interfaces, which means now your device is on your outside port, which you may not want. So, and we can see this this OW server here. It's been running. Well, we had the new version of Debian came out. I think we went from, what was it, 12.8 to 12.9 or something like that. So I rebooted the machine the other day. Very, very low resource count. So it does not. This server does not generate a lot of cycles, but you can query it with command line tools and get the information that you're looking for. So for instance, if I do an OWDIR, which is this is the suite of tools that's basically going to talk to the OW server and tell me what's connected to it. OWDIR basically tells me what sensors I currently have on the bus. Some of these are special. So for instance, there's settings and statistics, and like you could do things like find out how many errors there are on the bus, if you've had any alarms, et cetera, et cetera. But currently, right at the moment, I have three sensors on my bus. One of them is an upstairs sensor. It's located in my computer room here. One of them is a downstairs sensor, which is in my furnace room, and one of them is outside. So if I want to, for instance, find out the value of this particular sensor, I could say OW read, and we'll grab this. I may type this wrong. We'll see. Oop, there you. Oh, yes. Don't have that. Sorry, I'm on my laptop here because and I don't have my my usual mouse that I'm dealing with. So let's copy that. Let's paste that. And of course, we got to stick on an extra 0. And for temperature sensors, you want to read temperature. It's 20.125 degrees.
Where's that sensor?
That sensor, well, I can tell you, I have now we can get into some of the fun stuff that I've done with this. I have a little monitoring program which I fire once an hour in cron, and it basically does things like monitor the sensor. If one of them is too low or too high, it'll email me and text me and all of that kind of stuff. But and the configuration file that I've got is the 10.1. That's the basement. And here you can see exactly how I'm reading out of the sensor. I basically just have a mapping of the command that I read.
Right.
I could set a minimum, I could set a maximum. So for instance, just to make you glad that you're not where I am, let's copy this one and we'll paste it, and we'll see what the temperature is outside right at the moment, minus 19 degrees.
Yeah.
By the way, the OW read by default comes configured with Celsius, but there is a configuration option that you can provide it to give you the temperature readings in Fahrenheit. So you basically just tell it, tell me temperatures in Fahrenheit, and it will do all that conversion for you.
Yeah.
And that kind of allows me to do fun things like this. So let's go back
that's
over.
minus 2.5 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it's
cold.
Okay, so yeah, it's cold. Let me just do, oh, come here. Let's go to, can I move this out of the way? There we go. So, my little program basically monitors the temperature once per hour at the top of the hour, and logs it to syslog. And then I generate some nice web pages out of that.
Look at that.
And if anybody wants to follow along, that side of it is public. So if you want to go to beconia.ca temp and see what the temperature at my cottage is, by all means, go ahead. You won't get the CCTV, but that's. But for instance, right now at my cottage, main floor is sitting at 8.9. Outside's minus 19. Sunroom's at minus 12. And as we saw, and because of the fact that I'm logging to syslog, now I'm not a database guy like Jim is. So I just deal with my stuff out of syslog. But what that's basically allowed me to do is I've got a little program that queries all of the data out of syslog and then builds graphs out of it using GNU-plot. And if we,
Yeah, if you can move some of that stuff
yeah,
out
I'm
of the
going to have to
way.
move some stuff out of the way here. Come here, you. There you go.
Just click the X on that AI companion thing.
Oh,
or
can
not
I?
now.
Oh, good.
Or that
There we
not
go.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'm barely intelligent myself. I don't particularly need an AI companion to make me even more
Right.
unintelligent. So here I'm tracking the last, this is the last month's worth of, or the last 28 days worth of temperatures. And you can see that we've oscillated anywhere between minus
Yeah.
30 Celsius. We've had a few days where we've risen above zero. And again, I generate these graphs once an hour to an image, and then I can and
That's
then I
cool.
just call them up as an image.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a fairly simple, easy way. The tools are easy to set up. They're command line driven. Oh, and one of the things that I should show you is how to write to a one of these PIOs. So I have a separate little command called PIO, and I say cat PIO dot YAML. I have a hose connector that basically sits
Oh.
here in the home that I can turn on and off. I have the ability to raise my temperature up to 20 degrees out at the cottage by turning up another one of these things. And the command line for that, oops. And essentially the script to do that is more or less where are we here? You use the OW, you use the OW write. So you basically say OW
Still
write.
OW read, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have channel A and channel B, and then you can say on or off.
Huh.
And of course, if I wanted to read, you would do an OW read and then the PIO / channel A or channel B, and it would tell you either true or false. So very, very simple. You've really only got about 4 or 5 commands, OW read, OW write, OW dir. I think there's one more that you can call that I never use. And that basically allows you to get all the data out of your sensors, control your PIOs, turn things on and off, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, because they're just shell commands, you can execute these things from Python. You can execute them from a shell script. You can, just do whatever you want. It's very, very simple, very, very easy, and very, very elegant. The only downside to the whole one wire thing is the wires. You have to have wires going to where you want the sensors, and depending upon what your situation is, that may be easy, that may be insurmountable. At some point in the future, there's this new stuff that's come out. In the last 10 years, we've seen this whole explosion of the Internet of Things, right? And there's new wireless protocol that's out there called Zigbee, where you get another one of these sorts of adapters. They look like a serial port. You plug them in. They're a USB connector. But now it's going to talk radio signals out the far end. And then you can have temperature sensors and GPIOs to turn things on and off. But they're now part of a wireless mesh network that's in your house. You don't need the wire. The downside, of course, is now you're susceptible to distance limitations, right? One wire operates at a very slow signaling rate. So you could put a one wire sensor, I think it's like 150 or 200 feet worth of wire that you can run down. Well, you're not going to get a Zigbee signal going 200 feet. It's kind of, fairly, it's got to be within, I think, within 50 feet is all the stuff that I've seen. And of course, I would expect, like any kind of wireless thing, depending upon the layout of your house, how much steel or concrete you've got in the way, et cetera, you may find dead spots within your house where a sensor, you won't be able to hear a sensor. The other problem that you run into with the Zigbee, at least of the stuff that I've bought, the temperature sensors have a battery. So now you're in a situation where with all of my stuff, it's drawing the power from the USB host. So I never have to worry about a battery running out on one of my temperature sensors. And now, I've lost a crucial temperature reading, right? Out at my cottage, if my furnace were to die or, my power were to go out, that's something that when it's minus 25 out there, that's something you want to get on relatively quickly. You're not going to be able to leave it for weeks. You're, going to have under a day that you're going to have to respond to this and figure out what's going on. If you have a battery die out there, well, now you're in the situation where you're having to go out and maybe there's nothing actually wrong. You've just got a dead battery. So pluses and minuses to all these sorts of things. Once again, I haven't set up the Zigbee stuff yet. But I'm planning on playing around with it and racing the two against each other to see which one I like better. I've had, like I say, 15 years of experience with the one wire stuff, and I can tell you it's very, very reliable. Out at my cottage, I have a 1500 APC 1500. I've got my Starlink plugged into it. I've got my computer plugged into it. I track when I'm getting the USB signals out of the APC, so I'll get a warning when the power goes out. And because I've got my Starlink plugged in and the computer plugged in and everything else, if my power goes out at the cottage, I'll know about it. I'll get a warning of that, and then I can deal with it. Or if the temperature shuts off, if I get like say for instance, my furnace were to fail, then I'll get a low temperature warning, and then I can act on that. And I've got my UPS with the equipment set up that I've got will keep the Starlink and the computer running for well over 2 hours. So, it's pretty good. It gives me, if something goes on out there, like let's say, for instance, a tree were to fall across my electrical line, if I get a power outage signal, I can kind of afford to sit there and say, well, I'm going to wait 20 minutes and see whether or not it comes back on. It's not like the computer's going to die in 10 minutes. So basically, any power outage, signal that I get, I have to act on right away. So yeah, it's served me well for one wire has served me well for 15 years.
That's cool. That's cool.
Oh, and hold on. Let's do this. I'm going to move this temporarily. Hold on. Yeah. Oh, not now.
Not
Thank
now,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. List of one wire devices. I think the top of the list. Yeah.
There you
So
go.
there's a bunch of stuff. Oh, sure. View all parts. Yeah, so they've got, I wonder if can I make that go off to the side? Oh, stop. Go away. Yeah, so you've got all kinds of things like secure secure authenticators. The OneWire is used quite a bit in the home security system. There's several different types of OneWire. There's dual port, an I2C bridge. The I2C bridge would be quite useful if you've got, let's say, for instance, that there's a OneWire sensor that you wish you had, but isn't available as a OneWire, but it's available as an I2C. This thing will basically allow you to put I2C devices on your OneWire bus and make them look like OneWire devices. So quite handy that way.
These are
There's
cheap too. They're
Oh yeah,
inexpensive.
these things are not expensive as compared to like the Zigbee temperature sensor
Sure,
module
sure.
that I bought was like $20. Well, the DS18D20 temperature sensor, the little TO3 packages, you could buy those in lots of 20 for like $15, right? So I mean, they're cheap, cheap, cheap. Fuel sensors. I think there's a real-time clock you can get that basically this thing has a battery in it and you can ask it what the current date and time is. So it could be used for, so there's all kinds of stuff. It goes on for 4 pages here. So Google out there and you, like I say, you could find all kinds of interesting devices that you can tack onto a OneWire bus. And if you can't, and you've got an I2C device that you'd like to tack onto a OneWire bus, then you can use the OneWire bridge. But for me, basically all I'm using is the temperature sensors and the GPIO. And that basically, I can tell what temperature it is, and, I could potentially, if I wanted to set myself up a low budget security, I could put switches, some kind of magnet switch on each one of the front door and the back door and bring them down to a PIO. And then I could tell whether or not the door was open or the door was closed, et cetera, et cetera. So it really kind of lets you do just about anything if you're, handy with a soldering iron and, a little bit of wiring. You could do this, and it's going to work on any machine. So you're not, sort of forced to go out and say, well, I got to buy a Raspberry Pi or I got to do this on Arduino. If you get one of these USB interfaces, sky's the limit. If you're running Linux on any kind of a box, you're going to have this OW server package available to you, and you're going to be able to read and write the sensors. So yeah. Any questions?
What kind of soldering?
You said you had a way to control the temperature if you wanted to up to 20 degrees C. How do you do that linkage between the OneWire device and the thermostat?
So here's what I did. At my cottage, I have 2 thermostats on the wall. One's a high set and one's the normal set. All I'm doing when I switch to 20 degrees is I'm simply switching that higher thermostat in parallel with my current thermostat. And so that thermostat will then control the temperature. The reason why I do this is because it's fail-safe. Now, you could very easily set yourself up an actual thermostat using OneWire. You have the temperature sensor, and if you drop below a certain, what you're going to do is you're going to tap into your furnace wiring. If anybody's interested, I can talk about furnace wiring or thermostat wiring, but essentially you've got 2 for heat. You've only got 2 wires that you're concerned about. You've got the red wire that comes out of your furnace, which is the power, and then the white wire, which is call for heat. If you just short those 2 together, your furnace turns on. If you disconnect the 2 of them, your furnace turns off. So with one temperature sensor and one PIO with a little relay, you could write a program that essentially is a thermostat. The only problem is if anything ever crashes, right, you could either, depending on how it crashed, you could either have the thermostat stuck on or worst case, stuck off, right? And for me, with -20, I don't really want that. So I've got, and I haven't even upgraded to like a digital thermostat because they, of course, have batteries and batteries can die in the middle of winter. I've still got a couple of old Mercury thermostats out at the cottage because they're kind of fail safe. They work no matter what. So I've got one thermostat set to a very, very low temperature. I set it to about 8 degrees, and that's what's normally controlling the furnace. When I want to raise the temperature out at the cottage, so let's say, for instance, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be out there for the day or something like that. I'm going to blow the snow out, and I want the cottage to warm up before I get out there. I can basically just go on and say, turn the temperature up. It switches in the other thermostat, which is set to 20 degrees. Worst case scenario, if that thing fails and forever stays on, let's say, for instance, something catastrophic happens and I don't notice it, well, my temperature is just going to be at 20 degrees. My furnace isn't permanently stuck on because that other thermostat is controlling it. Or if it fails in the off position, well, my house just didn't heat up. It's still sitting at 8 degrees, right? So unless you're going to, I've seen people, and there's all kinds of projects that you can get out there with, like making an Arduino into a thermostat, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, for most modern digital thermostats, that's what they are inside. They're going to have some kind of a microcontroller and a little relay, and they're turning on and off the relay, and they've got a battery backup and blah, 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 blah. What they have that you may not is thousands and thousands and thousands of hours worth of testing, because everybody expects a thermostat to work super reliably, as opposed to, some code that you've downloaded off of the the internet or written yourself, which may have some kind of a memory leak on it, which after 6 months or a year may all of a sudden render your thermostat inoperable. So this is kind of it allows me to turn up the temperature, but because of the fact that all I'm basically doing is switching in parallel a thermostat set to a higher temperature, the failure modes are not going to do. The very worst thing that's going to happen is either my house is going to be at 20 degrees when I didn't want it to, or it's going to be at 8 degrees when I didn't want it to be. But it's never going to be completely off or always on. So,
All right, thank you.
does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Are those two thermostat, those two temperature sensors or thermostats, I guess, wired in series?
They would be when I turn on my little PIO, they're wired in parallel. So if you've got if the current temperature of the cottage is, like, let's say 9 degrees, and the normal thermostat is set to 8 degrees, that thermostat is going to be open. If I switch in the thermostat that's set to 20 degrees, that thermostat is going to be closed. It's calling for heat.
Right. So in parallel, if either one of them is on, it's gonna turn on your furnace.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose what I should do now. Does anybody want to see anything else on the computer, or should I stop sharing my screen now?
I'm good.
All right. How do I do this? Stop share. There we are.
What does PIO stand for?
Parallel input output.
Ah, okay.
Or
Thank you.
programmable input output. Either or.
All right.
Essentially, it's just a line that you can use either to read the value of an input.
Yeah.
So if you've got a switch or something like that, and you want to know what the switch is set to, you can read it. Or alternatively, it can be programmed to be an output, and you can use it to control a relay or a
Right.
light or something else.
Okay.
So these devices
How
are just
susceptible
little
is,
chips.
Oh. We got
These
two people.
devices are-
Let's go with Roller there first.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
So you're saying if I buy one of these devices, it's just going to look like a little computer chip type of thing, and I'm going to have to take a Ethernet cord and splice it open and solder it onto the board?
Yeah, literally what I do when I wire up the temperature sensors. Hold on one sec. Allow me to crawl underneath my desk for a half a sec here. Hold on. Let me.
Your
turn my
camera's off.
video. Yeah. Hold on. There we go. Let me crawl underneath my desk for a half a sec. I'll show you.
Sweet. Yeah, 'cause I figure I'll, get at least one temperature sensor and grab some extra cord and give it a shot.
So here, I'll try and I'll remove the piece of tape. On the internet, you can find these. I ordered these off of Amazon for I got like 20 of them for like next to nothing. But you can buy these little female socket with a breakout board that's got all of the pins as through-hole solder connections. And if you take a look on this thing, I'll separate it out. There's the little temperature sensor
Oh, that's cool.
as a TO3 device. So the first leg is +5, the second leg is the signal, and the third leg is ground. So all I've done is I've got this, and then I have the world's shortest Ethernet cable. Are you ready for this?
All right. Oh, wow. You just crimped it all.
So I crimped this up. So essentially what happens is I, put this in like this, and then it just sticks into the wall, and this is the temperature sensor for the room.
You didn't have to solder anything.
It's a dongle. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had to solder if you take a look here, I've
Okay, so
soldered
Okay. So
Right.
when you bought it, it was two separate pieces. You soldered it.
Right. Well, when I bought it, it was the Ethernet connector was separate from this little board, and of course this was separate. So I basically just soldered it into the breakout pins there,
Okay.
and soldered on the little Ethernet connector, and then bam! Now I've got essentially a standalone temperature sensor that uses standard RJ45, and of course my super effective. How do I make sure that nothing brushes up against this? Good old electrical tape.
Well,
Just wrap around a little bit of electrical tape.
that is
I'm nothing if not low budget.
Hey, that's so when you bought 20 things off Amazon, it was 20 of the little three-prong temperature.
Yeah, 20 of the little three-prong sensors. I bought a
Transition
pile of them for
controls.
And then you just got creative with saying, hey, I could power this off a little Ethernet plug. Right?
Yeah, about the only real fascinating thing I suppose you could say that I did was basically use the house wiring. And if anybody's interested, maybe at some future presentation I can talk about some of the other stuff. I use Cat5e/Cat6 wiring for a huge number of things. I've got a whole home 70-volt audio system that I'm distributing all the audio around the house via the Cat5e, Cat6. I can transport low voltage audio. So like, the two little RCA connectors left and right, I can transport that around the house via, RJ45s and Ethernet connectors. I'm doing this stuff. I'm using far more non-Ethernet devices on my wiring than I am actual Ethernet devices that I'm plugging into the wiring.
And
But
you-
infrastructure kind of creates its own opportunities. You know, once you've strung the wire around your whole house, now all of a sudden you can do all kinds of cool stuff.
So
So
would you recommend running your all Cat 5 instead of
absolutely, absolutely,
Why-
it
If
is.
you're gonna go through all the
It's-
trouble,
it's-
why wouldn't you put Cat 6 everywhere just in case you
Well, when I started, it was kind of like I had a couple of boxes of Cat 5e, so I started with Cat 5e. And the only thing that I will recommend to anybody who's wanting to undertake that, wherever you stick one wire, stick
Okay.
two wires. Buy two
Okay.
boxes of wire and run two in any location that you're going to do. You will find you can run. There's a website that you can find out there. I think it's called Cat5 Everywhere,
Okay.
and they basically outline how you can send USB over Cat5, how you can send HDMI over Cat5, how you can, right? It's the universal wire, right? So if you've got wires strung throughout your house, and you get it everywhere, now all of a sudden, doing things which would have been impossible before, become trivial. You can just,
Oh, that's cool.
anything you want to do.
So you were able to name the device that you plugged in via USB, but you weren't able to name the sensors because they just had random 10 dot.
Correct. The sensors, each one of the sensors comes with a unique 128-bit, or no, 128 byte. I can't remember what it was. You can read it up on the one wire. Anyway, they've got a unique serial number.
Okay.
So every one of the devices has, if you took a look, they start with some number and then a dot and then a longer number. The sum number indicates what kind of sensor it is. So whether it's a temperature sensor or whether it's a PIO or something like that. And then the longer number after that is the serial number for that device.
Very cool.
Yeah, so when you buy these things, they're all going to have a unique number on your bus. Sorry, and somebody else asked a question. I think it might have been
Oh,
Richard.
Okay, Dick.
Dick?
Yeah, Dick Williams.
Yeah, how susceptible are you with do you have to be concerned about crosstalk?
You have to be concerned with crosstalk over long distances. So there's a limit as to what the length. Hold on. Why don't we settle this right now? Let me just I'll just quickly look this up because one wire max bus length. Okay, if you do the star topology, which is what I'm doing, you have 100 meters, which is 300 feet that you can put so in other words, you can have 300 feet of wire on each one of your sensors. So yes, I mean that's ultimately what kills it is the crosstalk, right? But you've got a lot to work with. Compare that to I squared C, where I think the maximum length you've got is 6 feet, right? I squared C doesn't go very far, but it goes much faster. One wire is relatively slow, like it's operating in the kilohertz, range of how fast it's switching the signals, as opposed to, I squared C, which is operating in hundreds of, I think 600 kilohertz or something like that is what I squared C tops out at. So it's a much slower bus topology, but on the other hand, that slowness, I mean, yeah, I don't know when you saw when I read the sensor, it took like a second for it to read the sensor because there's this whole protocol where, the host signals something on the bus to say, hey, I want to talk to you guys. And then each one of the devices is now going to go, oh, really? Oh, I better listen for my address. And then it broadcasts the address. And then there's a bus negotiation protocol where the little device will grab control of the bus and then send the data back that it's wanting to send to the host. And that takes a second or two. You're reading temperatures. I mean, do you really need sub-millisecond response to find out what the temperature is, or is 1 second good enough? Well, for me, 1 second is good enough. So the fact that each one of these little, reading all four of my devices takes like about 4 or 5 seconds. So, you basically, if I were to try to query all of them and get the results back, it would take me, 4 seconds to get the results back. More than acceptable to me.
Yeah, my house is built in the 60s and fully wired for phones in every room. So I've got bundles.
You could do it over phone wiring, yeah, because that's going to give you 4 wires, right?
I've got eight bundles of 8 wires.
Okay, yeah. So you could just do it over the phone wiring. I'm just using Cat5 because that's what I wired everything with. But the bottom line is, if you've got old phone cable, these will work. Basically, it just needs to get the signal there. And you're not going to be talking anything more than probably a 50, 60-foot run at maximum, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, you're not gonna have that that much to worry about. To give you an idea of the cost, you can generally pick up these little interface units for if you buy a Raspberry Pi, it's got one built in. Raspberry Pi is going to cost you these days about $75. I'm talking Canadian dollars here. If you these little things you can pick up for about $75, and then the temperature sensors. You pick those up for, like I say, I buy bags of 20 of them for, $25 on Amazon, and the little PIOs, they're like $2 or $3 a piece. So I mean, for under $100 to $100, you could basically get yourself a house full of temperature sensor and several PIO inputs. And then the only thing that you're worried about is just the wiring, how you're going to get the signal there.
So that's what you were talking about with the star thing. You were saying you're running your little device that you spent like $75 on. You have to wire something into that. And then
right. It's going to have the one that I've got has a USB connector on it with that layout of the pins 1, 3, and 5 is ground, 2 is the +5, and 4 is data. So what I've got, like I say, is what you guys have seen you know what I'm talking about when I say an insulation displacement connector. The ones that you need the punch down. You put the wire on it, and you use the punch down tool to punch the wires onto the
66 blocks or whatever they.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
the punch down box.
Yeah, so when you get those RJ45 ones, they usually come, if you get a 24 connector of them, it's got like 4 packs of 6 modules. So for one of the modules, all I did was I just ran wire around, twisted pair, and I connected pin 1 on one of the ports to pin 1 on the second port to pin 1 on the third port, etc., etc. So essentially that thing becomes like a little bus. Anything you plug into it is going to have pin 1 connected to pin 1 connected to pin 1. So now if I plug in the little host connector, right, and it's providing power on pin 2, well, any devices that I plug in, pin 2, they're going to see the power because that's going to go to all the devices because they're plugged into that bus. And then it becomes simple. I don't have a picture of my cottage rack here, but essentially now all it becomes is you've just got short jumper cables. You've got all of your runs coming down, and terminating in Cat5 port, RJ45 ports, and then all I do is I just run them down into this little bus with short jumper cables, and this little RJ40, or sorry, this little USB dongle plugs into that. And now the USB dongle sees all of the devices that I've got plugged in. And if I want to move a temperature sensor around or add a temperature sensor, all I got to have is an RJ45 drop in that location. You know, I make up one of these little things with the world's shortest Ethernet cable, plug it into the wall, boom, and now connect it up to the bus, and off I go.
That's awesome.
So yeah, like I say, for a lot of people, the only downside to this is you have to have the wires. Zigbee replaces all this with a wireless protocol. Of course, that comes with all the problems of a wireless protocol, right? There you're going to get, the old, there's probably going to be electromagnetic interference. So you turn on your microwave and now all of a sudden you can't see any of your temperature sensors. I haven't played around with it enough to know. It's in that 440 megahertz band that it talks on. If you've ever had one of those, you buy like a temperature or one of those little weather stations, you hang it on your wall, and it's got an outside thing that you put a couple of batteries in, and you put it outside, and then it'll tell you what the inside temperature and the outside temperature. It's using that protocol, and those things operate on 440 megahertz. So it's using that sort of technology to get that done. Like I say, I haven't played around with that as much. I'm still learning that. So at some point in the future, once I've kind of got that squared away in my head, I can make a presentation to Mug about that, and that's kind of going to be kind of the alternate. But again, that's a much more expensive option in terms of, like, for instance, the USB dongle, which I had to program. It doesn't come programmed, so you've got to download. I had to buy a programmer so that I could download a firmware file to this thing and get that going so that the dongle was programmed. And then each one of these things, because they're a consumer grade unit, they're now a $20-$30 unit, as opposed to I'm buying a bag of 20 TO92 cased little transistor looking thingies for $25. So but now you don't need the wires. So
yeah,
a little from column A, a little from column B, right? Whatever you want to do. Any other questions?
Pretty cool.
What do you do? Do you run your Cat 5 cables or Cat 6 through the attic and then down the walls, and you have a
what I did in both my house and at the cottage. At the cottage, I've got half of the basement. We call it a cottage. It's really a full house out in the country. It does have a basement. So half of the basement is kind of my utility / furnace room. And as it turned out, I was basically able to get most of the runs of cable basically by judicious use of a fish tape and essentially just cutting holes in walls, using a drill bit to drill down through the floor plate, and then use a fish tape to pull the cables through. Yeah, certainly one of the standard ways that a lot of people do it is to, if you've got access to the attic, will be to run the cables up into the attic and then down into a centralized location from there. There's buckets and buckets of videos of how to wire your house for Cat 5, Cat 6, and it really just depends on your situation. And it also depends on how insane you are. My cottage, Jim knows, is a scant 768 square feet, and I have 32 drops in the cottage. So because just boredom and like I say, it was the pandemic. Oh, it might be nice to have a couple of Cat 5 connectors over there. Yeah. So I had nothing else to do. I was stuck isolating, and okay, well, I'm just going to run cable around because
Ubiquity has a good a good tutorial about the running cable in your house.
Yeah.
I followed that one, and you can they tell you to use these little J hooks to kind of run your drops on J hooks, so you kind of just hang them on there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's a whole world of I mean you could spend a 2 hour presentation just talking about all the ways that you can run Cat 5, and you need to know about, I mean, if you care about fire safety and stuff like that, there's different kinds of cable that's plenum rated and non-plenum rated,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The one thing that I will say is that once you get your entire house wired up with Cat 5e or Cat 6, either or, now all of a sudden there's just a huge amount of things that open up to you. You can go out and buy one of those Eero distributed Wi-Fi, mesh Wi-Fi router systems, and now your backhaul is over cable, right? Normally, most people run those things where it's like Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi, but that while you may get a good signal, you don't get as good a throughput. Well, now all of a sudden, if you've got a Cat 5 connect, a Cat 5e connection or a Cat 6 connection going somewhere, yeah, you drop this little Eero on there, and now you've got gigabit backhaul to the main router. So now your Wi-Fi is is going great. You can do the audio stuff like I'm doing. You can transmit HDMI. You can transmit. Cat 5 is just, it's just 8 beautiful pieces of copper that you can do an extraordinary number of things with, and there's an extraordinary number of adapters. I mean, you could buy Cat 5e to USB adapters. So if your computer server is sitting in the basement and you want to have a printer that everybody in the house can connect to, and you want to connect to it via cups, well, you could just connect it up to the server in the basement via these USB to Cat 5, have it upstairs, and it'll just send USB signals over the Cat 5e. There's a world you can't even imagine all the use cases. I haven't as yet imagined all the use cases, but just having the infrastructure there opens up the possibilities. Now you're in a situation where you can just say, yeah, it doesn't matter what signal I got to get. The bottom line is I got some copper wire running between point A and point B that I can make use of.
Yeah, I just run a couple different access points that have the switch built into it. So then you've got just a couple extra ports sitting around.
Yeah.
They're all on the same SSID, so they're all so
keep in mind
between them all.
Keep in mind, just to be clear, this will not, you won't be able to run one wire over something that has Ethernet on it, right? So for instance, you know how you can buy those wired, it runs the Ethernet over your power line, right? Mm-hmm. So you plug the two things into different plugs in your house. The one wire won't go over that.
Power over Ethernet is
it's
what
not
it's called.
Ethernet.
PoE.
Yeah, well, no, this is the older thing where it's plugging into your like a regular power socket, and then it runs the Ethernet. This will be Ethernet over power, not power over Ethernet.
10x or something, wasn't it? There was
10x or something
Ethernet
like that.
over
I can't
power,
remember.
Yeah.
Or they've got the ones where they're like, hey, if you've got coax cable running, turn it into an Ethernet thing, with this device on both ends.
And you could run this one wire over coax. So if you've got a coax connector, right? The shield is the ground, and then your signal /+5 would be the center conductor. So
interesting.
If you've got two wires going in some location, you can get this going.
Yeah, that's why they call it one wire.
Yeah, that's why they call it one wire, because you need two wires.
If you have two wires, yeah.
But all the communication happens over one wire. You do need a ground reference.
Seriously.
But what cold water pipes are for?
Yeah, well, you might be able to. Yeah, exactly. Use some cold water pipes.
That's just all ground.
So yeah, like I say, it's quite interesting, and it's not expensive to get into.
Sounds
In
addictive.
terms of the sensors are cheap, the host is cheap, other than the wire.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. It definitely sounds addicting, you know. You hook up one thing and then you go, oh.
Well,
Yeah.
like for instance, I when I was building the sunroom out at the cottage, one of the first things that I did, as a matter of fact, before I got the sunroom in, I wired a couple of Ethernet connectors out there. I did the work to run the Ethernet connectors. So then once I got the sunroom, like when I showed you the web page, I've got a temperature sensor out in the sunroom. Well, now all of a sudden I could just plug in another temperature sensor. Now, hey, I'm monitoring the sunroom, and then you can do all kinds of fun things like measure the delta between what the temperature is in the sunroom versus the temperature outside, blah, 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 blah. All kinds of fun things to keep you occupied.
Mm-hmm. Keep you off the streets.
Keep you off the streets at night.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking for one of those little Ethernet things that you showed. What would be a good keyword to search for?
Oh, which
I
the
got a link to some of them in my fold.
the sockets, these things? Oh, okay. Hold on one sec. Let me just quickly Google it, and I will tell you. I'll send you. I'll send you. I bought them on Amazon, if I remember correctly.
There's one in the chat that I found. It's
Oh, okay.
basically the connector with pins, and you got to stick it into a PCB solder board.
Okay.
Let me just have a look.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get one and start playing with it. This is cool.
Yeah, that's a
that'll work.
That's a pack of 10 of them for $9. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a steal.
I'm sure you can find cheaper. That was just one I found to go, okay, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, like you say, I mean, it's cheap. There's 10 of them for basically $1 a piece. The sensor's
Yeah,
$1 a piece, in bulk, and like I said, so for $2 you got yourself a temperature sensor that
And if you scroll that Amazon page, if you scroll down a little bit, the frequently bought together, it's got those little
right.
PCB boards too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So 10 of those for $7. So, geez.
Yeah.
When I bought them, they came like as a pack.
Yeah, I'm sure
it came with the PCB. So.
Sure, I'm sure you could buy those. Well,
this is cool.
But yeah, it's a fun way, and like I say, I mean, sending audio over Cat5, sending anything over Cat5. Well, you get one of these little breakout things, and now all of a sudden you've got a way to, basically, nothing says you can't. Like, who knows? This is ridiculous, but you wanted to basically power some LED lighting out somewhere. Well, run some Ethernet cable, just cheaply bury it underneath your lawn, and then you can, put one of these at the end and solder a few LEDs into it, and put a little power pack on the other end. Bam.
Right.
Yeah, like I got
the nice thing with Cat 6 cable, Cat 5e and Cat 6, especially Cat 5e, right? I mean, they're practically giving this stuff away now at this point. I mean, you can end up with, 1,000-foot rolls of the stuff for under $100. And the one advice that I'd give to anybody who's going to, think about wiring, is buy 2 boxes, right? Because when you're pulling, what takes all the effort is fishing the fish tape through in the first location. Once you've got the fish tape there, well, if you're going to pull one cable, why not pull 2, right? And then you've got 2 connections, and that was what I did throughout the cottage. Whenever I was going to pull, say I need a drop in this location, I put 2 drops in that location because I had 2 boxes of cable, so just made it easy.
I bought the stick. The 3 sticks that you could twist together instead of fish tape. You just run that flexible fish tape.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of big steel long fish tapes that you can.
Those are good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so in the Ubiquiti video they say don't run your cable next to power. You can cross over power, but
right.
without a T.
Yeah, you don't really want it
Don't run it
running
parallel
parallel
with
for
power.
that long.
No.
Wow, this looks fun.
That's way cool, Scott.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Well, right, and because then you make the device as simple as possible, and then you use your Linux computer to be the memory and storage. Because I seen on when you were scrolling on the list of devices, one wire devices, they're like, temperature sensor, temperature logger, with a little bit of memory in it. It's like $60, and you're like, no, let's just get the cheap one and use my Linux computer for that.
Yeah, and like, I mean, my server out at the cottage was a desktop box that was out where I used to work, and it had reached end of life. And of course, I said to them, well, what do you want me to do with these end of life devices? And they said, well, just take them to electronic recycling.
Exactly.
So I electronically
So there you
recycled
are.
them.
Yep. Yep.
And
Exactly.
so I've got a full Intel box out there, and threw a couple of disk drives into it, and that's acting as my file server out there. I've got a little Android box that I connect up to my TV. I'm running Kodi on that. I've ripped all my movies, so all my movies are on that, and,
Yep.
stuff like that. And I can do the temperature sensing, and that box basically sits there at 0.00 run average, like it's doing nothing. But I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff with it, so you can put these kind of things together for, like I say, cheap. The only thing that's quote unquote expensive is doing the wiring in the first place. But once you've got that done, it's like I say, once you've wired your house, you've got all kinds of opportunities. Ethernet devices, anything that basically you need 8 wires for.
Well, this is the time to do it. Do it when it's cold out, because
Yeah.
I wired my last house and it was hot out, and I regret it, man. I was up there in the attic. I was just like, get me out of here.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Scott.
All
I
right.
really appreciate you stepping in and taking the time to come talk with us. And there's some neat stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah.
It was this or crack cocaine.
Yeah,
This is
we had to
cheaper.
make a choice. Yeah. Just as addictive.
Now I have use for all the wiring that's run through the
There you
house
go.
from the 60s.
There you go.
So you're layering this all together, right? Your cottage is, I think you gave a talk before here where you talked about how you're using OpenVPN for everything.
Yeah.
So-
I'm using
Well, now you're using WireGuard, aren't you?
WireGuard. Yeah. So I've got WireGuard VPN set up between the house and the cottage. That's how I do my backups. I've got a server at the cottage. I've got a server at here at home. And when I rip a movie, I put it on the server at home, and every night it goes out to the cottage. So
Nice. But that way you can just grab the sensor data directly.
yeah. I just drive. It's the house in the city that basically generates all the web pages and does all the reading, and it just basically. One of the things that you can do is you can on that OW read and OW write command, it basically gives you the option of saying -s and then a server name, and it goes and contacts that box on port, the 4309.
So
So
it's
so it
Very cool.
yeah.
Like-
Yeah. Well, thank you. We are supposed to also talk about shell redirection. Justin Triplett was going to spearhead that talk, and
Oh, I thought I was.
oh, you are. You
thought
are.
I was.
Okay.
So I'm ready to if I
No,
need
you
to.
are. Okay. Because I was going to say Justin's not here. That's right. We volunteered you for that. So you want to start talking? This is just going to be a casual conversation about shell redirection. I have a hunch that most of the people here are plenty familiar with it.
Yeah, in the interest of anybody who watches it later on YouTube, I
Yeah.
certainly think it's useful. I don't appear to be able to screen share because I've never done that from this computer, and it wants me to
And you'd have
install
to
some
restart. Yeah.
XDE stuff. So
I'd be happy to bring up a show.
I'm going to
if
post
you wanna-
I'm going to post a link
Yeah.
and in there of the the easy introduction to redirection, and then the text of the things I was going to talk about, which is basically the input output. Let me see if I can share real quick.
Okay, let me stop. I was.
How
do I stop?
I've got to install something, so let me install some XDG stuff.
Okay. Okay, I think I stopped sharing.
I guess I should have looked earlier, but I did not. Yeah, it did not like I already got the XDG portal because I feel like I've shared on this. No, I guess I don't have X11 running. I'm under Wayland on this system. Whee!
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I can share. I can
Because
share
Wayland is just so much better than X11.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I only notice it in these things. But there's basically what I was going to say. That's about all you need to know.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen or a terminal, I guess.
And I mean, I remember it by what is going into the open side of the direction.
Yeah, so any process you run is going to have 3 file descriptors open by default, right? 0 for standard in, 1 for standard out, and 2 for standard error. So the thing is, I can't see your notes, the thing you just posted, because I'm sharing.
Oh, because you're sharing.
When you're done giving your explanation, Jim, I'm gonna provide one very important caveat and how to get around it.
So Jim, it just shows right caret, double right caret, left caret, pipe.
Yeah. Okay. So like ls is a command, right? Ls. I've got nothing in that directory. Hey, let's back up to the root directory. Ls. There's stuff in that directory, right? So I can run the ls command, and standard out is going to. I can normally standard out goes to the screen, right? Just like that. But I can tell it to send standard out someplace else, like /temp/out. And now if I cat temp out, it's got the contents of that, right? Other commands that need input. What's a good command? Well, sort, right? Like I can sort a file. Well, I can. Well, that's a lousy example of a file. I can sort /temp/out, and I can. And now it's sorted. It's weird because it's sorted by the first character. It's sorted from the beginning of the line. Sort has all kinds of options for how to sort on columns and stuff. We're not going to get into that tonight. But you saw how I ran that. I ran it by redirecting standard in from a file. If I hadn't done that, and I just typed sort, it's sitting here waiting for me to type things like hello. And how do I get? I don't want to annotate.
Control D.
I can type
Control Z.
Yeah, that'll get me out of it. There's something on my screen that's blocking where my cursor is. You guys probably can't see it. It's something Zoom is doing to me.
That was the problem I was having.
Yes, yeah, you had a similar problem. I'm typing all these things at the command line. Now when I hit Control D, it printed them out for me in alphabetical order and in sorted order, right? This was my input. When I hit Control D, then it sorted it and spit that to the output. Normally, though, you wouldn't run sort without redirecting standard in, right? You'd get the contents from a file, or you'd get the contents from another program. Sort, right? And I don't know if Joe's notes showed it, but there's greater than, double greater than, less than, and the pipe symbol.
Yeah, I use the less than one a lot with I'm taking a dump of a MySQL cluster and I have a brand new cluster and I just want to restore all the data from the
you want to feed
file.
you want to feed that data file to the MySQL command.
Yeah,
to load up a database.
I just run the connection command and then I run the little caret with the SQL file and it fills up the database with all the data.
Yeah. Here, this example right here is an example of both standard in and standard out. I'm taking the standard out of the ls-l command and I'm piping it into the standard in of the sort command. Right? And I can go even further. I can send that to /temp/out if I want. Right? That's redirecting the output of standard out. Sometimes you'll see a greater than file name. Sometimes you'll see a double greater than. And the double greater than is going to get you the standard error. So if this command were to spit out any errors, I think, let's see, what can I?
No, by default it appends. The double caret.
Oh, I'm sorry. Double greater than is appending. Two greater than is gonna give me standard error. Right, like that. So I can force an error by giving it an option that isn't valid. Right. So now if I go look at temp out, that's the error. So it's common to send the output temp out and the error to temp errors or wherever you want to send it, right? So this command is going to cause an error, so it's only going to send output to the errors. Well, if I didn't have that stupid option there, it's going to send the output to /temp/out. Right, and /cat/temp/errors is empty because they're errors. Right. Let's see. I used errors. So if I run that and there's no errors, then temp errors is going to be empty. What else can I show?
How about concatenation with two greater than signs?
Appending. Okay, so I can ls-l/temp/out, and I can run it again /temp/double. And what that did is that just concatenated. It just added to the file. Right now it's there twice.
How about redirecting both output and error at the same time with ampersand greater than?
Right. So I can send the output to temp/out and then two greater than &1. And what that's going to do is duplicate the output of standard error onto the wherever standard out is going. All right. So if there were errors along the way, they would be intermixed with the output in that file. So instead of sending standard error and standard out to two separate files, I could send them to the same file.
Do you want to talk about T? I find T.
Yeah, T is an interesting one. let's say you want to send the output to a file, but you also want to see it on the screen while it's running. And then you got to give it a name of a file, right? So this is going to send the output to this file, and it's going to display it on the screen. All right. Maybe a better example would be something that changes, like date. I can take the output of date and send it through T and put it in like date.out. So you see, we saw it on the screen and we see it in date.out. All right. If I run, let's see.
Yeah, I find that really
What else?
helpful in monitoring log files. You want to see what's going in a log file.
You want to capture stuff in a log file, but you want to see it while it's running as well. Usually what I'll do for log files, though, is I'll have some long running process spitting data out to a log file. And then on another screen, I'll tail -f that log file.
Yeah, I use it when I'm running a program that typically spits a bunch of stuff to standard out. I just tee it also to a file so I can go back and look at
because you want to you want to so you can capture it for later. Sure,
but I want to see it scroll by as it's going.
Sure. So you know things are running and you can get an idea of what's happening, but you have a record of it in your output file.
Here docs are kind of cool.
Yeah, here docs are better in a shell script. So let's try that. Here, I'm just going to call it here. Let's see. The syntax would be something like DOF. And then is it like /temp/out? And then whatever I put in this file, 1, line 2, line 3, and then EOF. And this string that you use here just needs to match. Is that the right syntax, or is it double less?
I think it's less than.
Double left.
Yeah, double less than. Yeah.
Is it? I thought it was triple. Is it just double?
No, I just put an example in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So what that's going to do is take everything from the next line to the EOF, not including the EOF, and put it, in this case, in that file. All right. So let's try it just to see. Now, if I run here and where I put it out, yeah, there's my output. Here's my program. So I ran it, and it took everything between everything starting at the next line down to the EOF, and that string that you use can be anything you want it to be. It just has to match, right? And then I think there's some rules about if you put it in quotes, it will do. Let's see if we do something like var1 equals. I think if you put that in quotes, it will do variable interpretation or interpolation. Here. Yeah. Oh. Here, hang on. I think if it's not in quotes, it'll do the interpolation of the variable. Right?
Nice.
So it was not in quotes, so it was not in quotes, so it actually interpolated that variable with its value. So that's what we see here, hello. If it were in quotes, it doesn't do that. It just printed exactly what I told it to print. So it's quotes is kind of like verbatim, print exactly, write exactly what's in the here doc. There's other tricks too. I think single quotes mean something. If you do a man on, well, let's do this. Man bash. Here. Here documents. Yeah. Oh, it's double this. If you have a hyphen in the first character of the word, I think it strips out any leading blanks. Let's see. If any part of the word is quoted, the delimiter is the result of the quote removal on word, and the lines in the here document are not expanded. That's what we saw when I put quotes around it. It did not expand variables. If it's unquoted, then all the lines in the here doc are subject to parameter expansion, command substitution, and arithmetic expansion.
And these are nice little tricks to know because sometimes you come across a file that has a bunch of those new line characters in it or something weird, and
yeah,
you don't have to immediately panic. You can just go, oh, I'll just
If you put a hyphen after it, all leading tab characters are stripped from the input lines, and the line containing the delimiter. So that's kind of neat. Here we can do this. Normally, the end delimiter has to be the very first thing on the line, but if I put let's put a hyphen there and take that quote out. Actually, it's this is gonna be a problem because I've got my Vim set up to strip tabs or not strip tabs, replace tabs with spaces. I don't think that's going to work. It did work. See the document, the man bash. It said all lines of the here document are, let's see, leading tab characters, but we just saw it. It also removed blank lines. Or not blank lines, leading spaces. Let's see if my output actually HD here. Did I actually have? No, that's actually, it does have tabs in it. Okay. It just looks funny because I got tabs set to, okay. Yeah, those are tabs. Okay. So you see, if you put the hyphen there, it's going to strip leading tabs when it writes the document so that you can write your shell scripts in a, your code can be properly indented when you're writing. Let's go back to that man page again. There's some more stuff in there. Let's see, triple less than. It undergoes tilde expansion, parameter and variable expansion, command substitution, path name expansion, word splitting, and okay. So what are they telling us here? If it's got triple, it's gonna undergo all this tilde
Like,
expansion.
Tilde being /home/user, I
Right,
guess.
Yeah, tilde expands out to your home directory.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to do all the command substitution, arithmetic substitution. Duplicating file descriptors. Duplicating input file descriptor. Why would you do that? I get it for output redirection using this, like 2 greater than ampersand 1. Like we showed, we can send we can send standard error to the same file descriptor as standard out. I encourage you to read the man page on HereDoc because there's a ton of stuff in here.
Right.
There's a way to swap file descriptors. You can do greater, less than and greater than, and that'll use that file for both input and output. Seems dangerous.
Right.
Anyway, any more thoughts on shell redirection?
There's another cool one where I just put an example where you can use the output of ls, but treat it like it's a file. So you can do diff. So you can have ls one directory and ls on another directory and diff. See what the difference is between the two directories.
Yeah, I can't see the chat.
Oh, it's okay. So you just type out the example and then you can make it work in a sec. But it just say diff and then space less than, and then in parentheses type ls dir, or not parentheses, no, not quotes. I mean, what is that?
Parentheses?
Yeah. And then just say ls dir1, close parenthesis.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then do the same thing for ls dir2 or some other directory, and it'll basically treat the output of the command as like it's a file when you put
I
it
see.
in that little.
So we're redirecting 2 things into it? No.
Well, it's supposed to treat it like it's a file. So you should see the difference between the 2 LSs, but is there anything in the current directory?
Yeah.
Oh, you're in the temporary directory.
Yeah.
Oh, did you do a temp? Yeah, you did the current directory.
There was no
itself,
difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right. It was like,
the diff was showing us exactly what it was. Yeah. Current directory and temp. So yeah, if I do this, I didn't know you could specify 2 less thans. It's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know it would. Yeah, that's it. And I didn't realize you could get it to act like a file.
Yeah,
But
right.
redirect the output of that in. Nice.
Huh.
Slick.
Yeah. It might be better if I had like text is
like
A B C D E F G H I, and let's copy A.text to B.text.
Or you could do
if I just change that one to XYZ or ZYX. Now normally I do diff A.text and B.text, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's showing me the difference, the line 2.
Yeah.
You're saying I could do instead, well, I'd have to do like cat B.text.
Right. That should do the exact same thing.
Cat B.text. Same thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. My little example here, just catting those 2 files is kind of silly. But you could actually run 2 processes and have them both spit out their data and it would run through diff.
See what the difference is, right? In maybe a log file or not a log file, but neat. Like a process, right? Okay.
Sure. That's pretty neat.
The one caveat to this is a program that a lot of people get screwed up on is SSH. People try to pipe things into SSH.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't work because SSH doesn't use standard in and standard out. It actually opens up every process has its own dev TTY or VTY entry, and it writes directly to the VTY.
It does, but
you can get around it by wrapping it in like a Python program or something that does like a fork PTY, and then you get a pseudo terminal, and then you can read and write to the pseudo terminal. And if anybody's interested, I can paste a Python example of that. But yeah, that's the one thing that a lot of people find frustrating. Well, oh, I'm going to pipe a bunch of commands into SSH to a remote server and get the output out. And yeah, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm actually doing that though. When I back up a database, I'm going to look for it right now.
I have done an
I'm
SSH
compressing the data and
that
shooting it
spits
across
out
the network.
data and then pipes it to another SSH and shoots that data across. I have done that. Pipe the output of an SSH command and then into the SSH command that you run on the next one.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking for where I actually do that.
Yeah, there's some trickery that you have to do though.
Yeah, here, I'm going to paste that's actually doing. I forget why I had to do it this way, but I want to get this file over to another machine. This is probably a better example right here. I'm going to put this, I'm going to set it as. Here, I'm encrypting a file. My input file, I'm encrypting it using a password, piping the output through SSH to a remote host where on that remote host, I'm running cat, which is reading that piped data and writing it to a file.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about what I've done is use the output of an SSH pipe to another SSH to
yeah,
skip a jump host step.
Yeah, in this case, I was trying to pipeline this thing because this is a 3.5 terabyte database that I back up once a week this way. We also do database replication, so the data is safe in many ways, but we do take a weekly snapshot of the database using PG-based backup, which will do a nice dump of the data, and we take that file and we encrypt it and send it to a remote machine.
So that just does it at like sequentially, like as it's encrypting, it's writing.
As it's encrypted. Otherwise, it would take way too long to sit there and encrypt the whole file, and it would take disk space. Because a 3.5 terabyte database, you don't want a bunch of intermediate files laying around because they take up so much space and the time. So we're encrypting it and sending it across the network and right into a file on the remote machine all in one shot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
It works really well. And I tested it. We have to test 4 times a year to make sure that our backup is good and stuff. And it is every time. I can restore that file right here back into a database.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a ZFS send and receive type of stuff.
Yeah.
Probably how I do that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Very cool.
More shell redirection tricks. I see we're at 9 o'clock. That's pretty much the end of our meeting, I think. Any more questions? No? Anybody here? I lost a few people, didn't I?
Yes, we're here.
Yeah, somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Get kicked out eventually.
Yeah.
I'm here.
So if you weren't here at the beginning of the meeting, I pointed out the upcoming meetings. Next month, February 11th, we're going to be featuring Tom Lawrence. He's going to be talking about virtualization using XCP-ng, which is a pretty cool. I just started using it about 2 months ago for virtualization, for setting up virtual machines. If you're familiar with VMware or VirtualBox or any of the other handful of virtualization techniques, XCP-ng fits right in there. It works really nice, and it's free. It's all open source. So he'll be talking about that. And then at our March meeting, it's March 11th, we're going to be doing the Advent of Code again, where we solve the Advent of Code day one in a number of different languages. And so far we've got, let's see, what have we got? Code for languages so far. We have awk. We did it in. Wolf did C++. He did it in pandas. You know what that is? The some kind of thing. Python. Yeah. I did it in Perl. Wolf did it in Racket, which is a Lisp variant. I looked at that and it just melted my brain. Wolf did it in Rust. I did it in SQL, which turned out to be really, really cool. That'll kind of melt your brain a little bit.
So what is the program supposed to do? I mean, what's the challenge?
Well, it's Advent of Code. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can. Well, I'm going to try to stop sharing. Can I? How did I do this before? Right there. I will paste the link again for Advent of Code. It's this little coding challenge that comes out every December, and I think there's 25 days. Each day the problem gets progressively more difficult. Well, we just solved day number one. If you look here at this link that I just put in the chat, it's just to encourage people to try solving this simple little problem using the language of your choice. So I was just reading through the list of programming languages. I'm attempting to do it with Yak, Lex and Yak, if any of you guys are compiler writers. I did a bunch of Lex and Yak work a long time ago, and I'm trying to get it work. So basically it just parse the data as though it's compiling the data, and it'll spit out an answer. And I did it in Vim 9 script. If any of you guys are Vim users and you played around with Vim script, I solved the problem with Vim 9 script, and that was really cool. It taught me a lot about Vim 9 script. Anyway, I believe Justin is on the hook for doing it in Python. And I think, let's see, Dick Williams, we're trying to get him to do it in C and assembly. Somewhere back here. We do have a GitHub repository for this. I encourage you to go check it out. Let me go find it for you. Let me go find the GitHub link, the GitHub repo. Almost there. Here, I'm pasting this link in the chat. There's our GitHub repository. If you're going to try this, I encourage you to clone that repo and follow along with what we've done. If you're not fluent in Git, just solve the problem and send us the source code, and we'll put it in Git. Because what we really want to do is make this stuff available to everybody.
Okay, that's cool.
Last year we did this, and we got some interesting solutions. Somebody solved it in Bash, and somebody solved it in Sed. The Sed one was really cool. I don't remember who did it, but it was really interesting. So this year we're looking for more unique interesting ways of solving it. And the Racket one was really cool because that's Lisp, and I know nothing about Lisp. So looking at that, it melts my brain. But it's a ton of parentheses, right? That's what everybody always says about Lisp. But it's out there.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's March. And that's last year it was a lot of fun. I think we had 6 different people involved. We'll take as many people as we can get and give everybody like 10 minutes to explain how they did what they did. And it's a fun interactive meeting.
Fine. It'll be March before you know it. I couldn't believe it's 2020.
I know. We're gonna get Scott to do it in 4th, right?
I can certainly give it a try.
Give it a try. We'll even take failures. Not that you are a failure.
I think I'll either do Erlang or Haskell just because.
Yeah. Haskell is one that I think would be cool too. I don't know anything at all about Haskell, but
I don't either, but I got a book.
Well, you're that much further along than I am.
Yeah, I got a book, so I'm a step ahead.
So you're it. So yeah, try and do it in Haskell. Like that'd be cool. Erlang would be a good one. Elm is a language that I know nothing about. Wolf is going to try it in Zig. Do you guys know about Zig, programming language? I don't know anything about it, but he's doing it in Zig. He and I had just been going back and forth on this thing, just spitting out as many as we can. But I encourage everybody to get involved. And even though somebody might have already solved it in some language that you'd like to try it in, go ahead and do it. And then we can compare what you did with what somebody else did. Last year, Dave did it in Swift, and I think he's going to try and do it again this year in Swift. Anyway, give it a try. It's fun. So we'll be talking more about it next month because I want to get as many people signed up to do it. Or you don't even have to sign up. Just do it, and if you show up that night and show us what you did, that's enough.
Okay.
So we're trying to do like low barrier to entry.
Right, but enough creative freedom to use your favorite tool. Get a little, interesting with it.
Right. You know, somebody. Well, Wolf did it in C++. I don't know. There's so many languages out there.
I wonder if I could, if I get some time, I'll try and dig into it. I wonder if I could pull it off with Chameleon.
I don't know anything about Chameleon.
I use it to take the last step before rendering the HTML onto a web page.
Okay.
It's kind of like Jinja.
Don't know anything about that either.
Yeah, when you build web apps, you can do a front end language for HTML. So I wonder if I could pull it off with that. You know, throw some data in the database, pass it to it, and see if I can get it to do it.
Sure. I don't know. There's some scary languages out there. Do it in like XSLT. The thing for rendering XML into
style sheets,
HTML or that's I'm not sure. I did some XSLT stuff a few years ago.
People are doing weird stuff. I just saw on Slashdot someone got Doom to run in a PDF file.
Okay.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's like 10 after 9. I think that's the end of our meeting. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you especially Scott for giving us an awesome presentation. Really enjoyed it. Neat stuff. All right. So
Hi everybody.
Bye.
All right. See you guys.